Welcome to the Excellence in Training Academy, where trainers come to grow at excellenceintrainingacademy.com. I'm very pleased to have with us this week Josh Bryant. Josh is a world-renowned strength coach. He was a record-setting power lifter, strength athlete, and has coached multiple world record holders in various strength events. Recently, by demand, Josh has transitioned into working with tactical athletes via remote training. Josh is a best-selling author and gives seminars around the world. So Josh, welcome to the Excellence in Training Academy.
I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Now, I reached out to you after I heard you on another podcast, and I've read a couple of your books, and I want to talk about tactical fitness and specifically bodyweight things that people can do when they have no access to gyms or limited time or space. But first of all, something I want to talk about is you have kind of a brand that's called Jailhouse Strong, that I think sometimes when cops see that, they might misinterpret that. Can you talk a little bit about why, as a strength athlete and a strength coach, you started looking at what people were doing in prisons to develop massive levels of strength and fitness?
Yeah, there's a few different reasons. So it has nothing to do with actually being in jail. It's just looking to that, I guess, particular segment of society, because what they do is do or die in jail. They have to be as strong and fit as possible. And as we call it, gas station ready, which means being ready for like the unknown, essentially. And they don't have access to the best equipment. So they're able to, growing up and working in the gym, I saw all these guys when they first had weights, and I don't know what the situation in Canada, they took weights away in 1992. So even when I started working at a gym when I was 16 years old in 1997, there were guys getting out of prison, which obviously didn't have access to weights, but they still came out of prison extremely strong, extremely conditioned, and pretty much ready for anything. And that's what we look to, is they have to develop that. It's like do or die. They have no choice. So looking to that segment of society was helpful in maximizing results while minimizing equipment. And I think the perfect situation of why that's beneficial is right now in this pandemic. You may have, if you have any, I was saying anything outside your body weight's a luxury. So if you have access to your body weight, which everybody does, we can do something to get you physically better. And then it also came down to a philosophy of, we want to help people improve their mindset and kind of free them from whatever's their current form of imprisonment. Now, people reading it most likely aren't in jail, but it could be, something else weighting them down outside of jail. So the other books of mindset were to help people combat what's causing like a mental prison.
Excellent and great explanation. And you highlight some people that had spent time in jail in your book, but they're people that when they got out of jail turned their life around. Now, some of them were heavily involved in gang activity and criminal activity, but lifting weights or strength training was a status issue and, as you said, a survival issue. So you're in no way glorifying the criminal element, but I agree with you that I think that we need to learn from them and what it is that they're doing in confined spaces, limited equipment, and coming out pretty darn fit.
Yeah, it is, in that regard too. So everybody in there has reformed their life and is a productive member of society. But even, let's just say they had it, that part, I don't want to glorify somebody that is still doing bad things, obviously, but that it's just like you said, being pragmatic and looking at, okay, this is like the benefit. Like I might I might not agree with somebody's, whatever they're doing in their life, but if I can learn something from them, I'm going to learn something from them.
Absolutely.
And I think that's where you can use that information. You can separate the philosophy from the individual if you're mature in your thinking.
Absolutely, and that's such a great point. And I talk about that in some of my seminars. In fact, I show a clip of a guy who's a gang member, member of the Nazi Lowriders, which is a West Coast gang in the U.S. And he's talking about, he's telling officers that if you're fat and out of shape, you're going to be in huge trouble if you get into it with us, because he said, I'm in my cell 23 hours a day, 24 hours a day, but we're doing burpees and push-ups all day long in our cell, and if you run out of gas, you're going to be in big trouble. So there's a, and I play that for a reason. In fact, our fitness with my former police agency, one of the workouts that our fitness people started doing with recruits at the very end was called the NLR workout, which came out of Corcoran State Prison, and it was the Nazi lowrider workout, and it was complete body weight. And they had to scale it back drastically because even the super fit people were having a really difficult time completing this workout. So I think there's a lot we can learn from that. So I want to talk about, you talk about training tactical athletes, and you refer to the first responder community and the law enforcement community as tactical athletes. So can you talk about some of the keys to gaining tactical fitness in an environment like we have now, where you don't have access to the gym and maybe all you have is access to your body or some very rudimentary things? Can you talk about some of the ways that we can develop that tactical fitness within those frameworks?
Sure. So, I mean, there's plenty of, like I said, anywhere, anything outside of your body weight is a luxury. So if we look at your body weight, we can, so a lot of people might be listening and saying, yeah, you know what, but I weigh, 200 pounds and I bench press 450. So, push-ups are out, but are they really out? What you can do with those push-ups is you can make them explosive plyometric push-ups where you like push yourself up in the air and you become airborne. You could make them one-arm push-ups. You could, put your feet up on something to make them more difficult. The gear you're wearing to work, you could use so if you're, working as a police officer, say, I don't know what it is in Canada, but here I work with the Fort Worth Police Department a lot. So the average just officer on the street is going to be about 25 pounds of external load they're walking around with. Yeah. And then when they're a SWAT, it's more like 66 pounds. So that's a lot you could be using for something anyway. So yeah, you can make these body weight movements harder. And I think that's a mistake people do with the body weight training is they just get endurance happy. Like you just mentioned, the prison burpees is awesome stuff. So I interviewed somebody that's on my YouTube channel just last week that had been to prison, and now he's reformed and runs a very successful, lucrative personal training business in Florida. And he was talking about every Thursday they would get together and you had to do it was kind of revolutionary because I don't know how the prisons are up there, but here very segregated by race. And he got a black guy, a white guy that did this and got into their like burpee deal they were doing, and they let him in. They said he had to be a part of it. You basically had to do 400 burpees. I'm like, well, how long did you have for that? I mean, it's obviously if you were 12 hours, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I did it in 40 minutes. Wow. So, I mean, that's an extreme level of conditioning, right? I mean, yep. So I was like, I'm going to try, I'm in real good shape. So I'm like, I'm going to try this out. And I did, I'm going to see if I can just do 200 of them in 30 minutes. And I made it, but it was not easy. It was very hard. So I mean, you basically doing twice that many, only 10 more minutes that's an extreme, level of fitness. So if you're lacking conditioning, obviously, there's tons you can do right now from, sprints. You can do, all those different, burpees, all conditioning stuff. But I think even for strength, that's where people are missing out on it, because if these movements you think are easy, try them on a single limb, try them in a plyometric fashion. Then there's outdoor stuff. There's like, I think one of the most effective ways that people miss out on training is with strongman events. And you don't have to have like perfectly made farmer's walks. And if you just go out to, the wilderness and pick up a stone and walk around like that, you get a lot out of it. So there's tons of stuff you can do to train strength and explosive power right now. And I think a lot of people are thinking all you can do is train for endurance, which obviously you can, but you can do these other things too with just a little bit of innovation.
And I think a lot of people, so if we go back to the push-up, I think a lot of people, think of just the standard push-up, but there's an awful lot of ways that you can vary a push-up by the positioning of your arms, the width, or how close your hands are together, sure, how wide they are apart, how far they're in front of your body, whether your feet are elevated, as you said, whether you're on one leg, whether you're doing Hindu push-ups or you're doing Spider-Man push-ups. Can you talk about a lot of those variations, and then also about how you can vary tempo to change the impact of that workout?
Sure. So you could do, there's tons of different variations of push-ups you can do. So some that can make it more difficult is like a Hindu push-up. That's like a bomber push-up to kind of start with your feet a little bit wider, butt up in the air, and you kind of like dive down towards the floor. Then you kind of end up in a circular, motion, like in a kind of a bridging position. If you guys get a chance, go on the internet, look up a guy named Great Gama. He's a world champion, arguably the best wrestler of all time. He was in India, like about 100 years ago or so, and he had like 500 matches undefeated, and he was the world champion into his 50s. That was his primary movement. It's called the Hindu push-up. We can do things like, elevate your feet on a push-up. You can do things like go to a single arm push-up. You can do, push-ups, put your hands on a box and get a deeper stretch in between those push-ups. Then with a tempo, what you can do is like the kind of entry level of varying the tempo would be just make the negative a little bit slower. And then the way to really, kick it up a notch would be to start doing like explosive plyometric push-ups where you actually like leave the ground because you become airborne because you're applying so much of the force on the ground and not stopping at the normal locked out position. You're actually becoming airborne.
Now, is one of the keys to advancing to plyometrics with any of these movements to make sure that we have a good, solid foundation first before we try to go too advanced?
I definitely, in my opinion, absolutely yes. So, I mean, because we're talking more in context of if somebody is able to, I guess, if someone has like a requisite base level of strength. So we should be shooting, for about like on a bench press, say, about 1.25 times body weight up to like 1.5 times body weight to really take advantage of these things. On a squatting, it can be more like a double body weight or deadlift a double body weight. And those are kind of good thresholds to really get to these more advanced levels. So you definitely want a level of requisite level strength or limit strength, and then kind of work off it from there. So it doesn't like with bodyweight training. If you're a tactical athlete, it's not this or that. It's going to have to play some sort of component because if you're bench pressing 500 pounds, but you weigh 450 and can't do a pull up, you're not going to be able to climb over an obstruction. So you can't really get away from that strength to body weight ratio. There has to be that level of strength to body weight ratio, and you have to be able to do it through body weight movements because these are actually like your job. It's not just like, a formality. It's like, no, you're actually have to climb over this thing. You have to push them off the ground to get away from, to get somebody, whatever it is. So it's very important, not only for safety of the training, but actually to do your job well.
Now, is another way to add, challenge to something like a push-up to add some weight? So maybe, people that have small kids and the kids want to come and hang around when mom or dad is working out, that you could have your child sit on your back while you're doing push-ups, or maybe put weights, sandbag or something in a backpack and to increase the level of resistance in a push-up. Is that another way to add challenge to some of these things?
100%. So there was actually a study that showed this. So they compared people bench. So this was like, I guess, more geared towards powerlifting training, but they showed people bench pressing for like 8 or 12 weeks. I don't recall exactly how long it was. It was in that time frame, like a normal bench press routine. Then they had people doing band resistant push-ups. So they just put a resistance band around their back to make it harder as they push up. So, added resistance that way. A lot of people have resistance bands. So anyways, at the end of the study, it was, a non-significant difference between the strength gain in the bench press. But interestingly enough, these people doing the push-ups that are band resistant didn't even bench press. So it's amazing that they gained a pretty similar amount of strength in a movement they weren't even doing with the band resistant push-ups. So you can absolutely, that's what I was talking about before with the push-ups, is if you have yourself. So you don't need anything or anybody to put anything on you. But most people do live with somebody else. So the other person you live with is a potential, weight. Putting sandbags on your back, like you said, if you had just like a couple plates lying around, you could put those on. There's tons of different stuff. A weighted vest. There's so many different ways you can play this. And if it's just, you can load push-ups 100 different ways. And I think it's absolutely effective. Just look at like prisoners online, how they do things like bicep curls and tricep extensions. A lot of times they'll just get a trash bag and fill it up with water. And they'll start doing, bicep curls, throw it behind their head and do some tricep extensions. So there's tons of, if you don't want to just use your body weight, you want to use like household items, there's so many that are around. I mean, just think about like if you have a countertop, you can do push-ups off that countertop. The table, you can get under it and do an inverted bicep curl. You could do a body weight tricep extension against it. The possibilities are endless.
Absolutely. And, we were talking about sandbags, and it seems to me with sandbags that, you can go and get sandbags pretty cheap, and if you put them in a construction-grade trash bag and duct tape the crap out of it so it doesn't explode in your house, that's something that you could carry around. It's something you could put in a backpack to do push-ups. It's something you could do curls with if it was in a backpack. It's something you could hold while you're doing squats. Is that sometimes where we miss the simple things? We're looking for the really fancy piece of equipment, or we need
absolutely
the lifting rack, and missing the simple things?
Yeah. So, even if you have access to whatever you want right now, there's a ton of benefits to including the sandbag training. So that it doesn't even have to be like, oh, this is all I have, so I'm going to settle for sandbag training. It's like, no, I have the most state-of-the-art equipment at my fingertips, but I'm still going to include sandbag training because you think about it, when you do like a powerlifting movement, like I'll say a deadlift, for example, the whole objective of that is you want to find a specific groove to that exercise. That's part of getting stronger, like building, your base level of strength is a repeatable pattern you do over and over again. Well, that's the whole point of that. With a sandbag, it's not going to be like that. You have to like improvise a lot, It's going to be, if you're picking up a sandbag and loading on something, it's very uncooperative. So if you have to work overtime to basically stabilize that sandbag, so your core, your trunk, your grip, all that stuff's greatly enhanced with sandbag training without like specifically targeting it. And you think about it more, there's so many different movements you can do with a sandbag that you can do, besides like just doing push-ups. You can do like bent over rows with a sandbag, use some form of deadlifting. You could push press it, do a Turkish get-up, lunges. I just did lunges to it yesterday. Clean and press, all sorts of different things you can do with a sandbag. So if you are using sandbags, don't think you're kind of conceding and doing something not as effective. It's very effective using a sandbag. And I like to use them no matter if somebody has a sandbag and they're doing some sort of tactical training, it will find a place in that program at some point.
Excellent. So talk about some of the lower body options. So I think the thing that automatically comes to mind for people is body weight squats, but can you talk about all the different versions of a body weight squat or different elements that we could do for lower body training as well? That if we just are looking at body weight or even with some of those rudimentary elements?
Yeah. So, before we get right there, let's just show we have the sandbag. So a great way, if you have a sandbag to load it some, it is with, a squat is with a sandbag. It loads you differently. You get all these other benefits out of it. So that would be a really good one to use. Then you could have like, people living with you, you hold an animal it's a pet or something, but let's say that's not going to work. So all you have is you have like your most basic, squatting, just do like a regular, body weight squat, but then we can do things like, Hindu squats where you kind of come up, if your knees are healthy, you come up on your toes. This is one from the great Gama, the wrestler, again too. And you kind of swing your arms around a circular motion and you get really deep that way and you breathe out on like a regular squat on the way down to really get a good stretch at the bottom. You can do those. You can do, Bulgarian split squats, elevate your rear foot and do rear foot split squats that way. You can do, if you're able to, you can do things like pistol squats, one-legged squat. You can do a regular squat with a pause at the bottom. You can do a jump squat where you squat all the way down and jump as high as you can up after. Obviously you're not going to jump as high as a regular vertical jump, but that's another way to add an explosive dimension and increase the tempo. You can change the tempo in the squats. You can go, down slow, up fast. Add isometric pauses on the way down where you're going down, stopping in a third of the way for a few seconds, holding it, so on and so forth. So it is going to be, if you're in really strong and in good shape, it is going to be more challenging to get in good lower body work. Assuming you're strong enough, you can hit a lot of plyometrics. You can. One of my favorite with those is like jumping lunges, where you're alternating in the air, jumping the lunges. You can do all sorts of different lunging movements. Like one I like for I've had people that are strong struggle with this one right off the bat without using resistance, is a drop lunge. So you're standing on, say, on top of like 3 or 4 inch surface. You lunge forward off of that surface, and you get a good stretch after you centrally control yourself on the way down. So then if you have bands, you can add band resistance and stuff like that. So there still is plenty you can do even for your lower body. But I mean, if you're, feel like you have to use some resistance, you use a sandbag, use a rock, use something and squat down with it.
I think sometimes we convince ourselves that we need resistance, but because we generally don't do a lot, we do 5 or 10 body weight squats, and we say, well, that was pretty easy. But like you say, when you add something even simple as an isometric element where you go halfway down and stop, and then you do some fold, can you talk about the use of isometrics in body weight training?
Sure. So that's I'm not as big of a fan of using isometrics on the concentric portion. So when you're like lifting yourself up, I'm not as big of a fan of doing that. There'll be time and a place for it sometimes maybe, but not regularly. So because I like to train, assuming somebody's healthy, focus on an explosive concentric. So I like them a lot on the negative. So like if you're lowering yourself on a squat, say, or a push-up even, so you want to make it, say, I don't want to do 40 push-ups, for multiple sets, because that's, it's boring, too easy like this. So what you do is, on a push-up, lower yourself down, a third of the way, hold it for 5 seconds, lower yourself down, halfway, then hold it for 5 seconds, lower yourself down 2/3 of the way, hold it for 5 seconds, then go all the way down and do explosive concentric, do the same thing over. That'd be one way you can really load it isometrically. And the isometric strengths, something that a lot of people don't train, so it's going to be a good overload if you haven't been training it anyways. And it does come into play in certain situations. You think about if you were having to wrestle with a suspect or somebody kind of isometrically locked up, it is important to have that kind of strength in that situation.
Excellent. So, and I think the key is that we need to start thinking about different positions of our feet, our hands in a lot of these to change the way that the body's loaded in the challenge. Now, I think one of the other exercises that people often think of when we think of body weight is pull-ups. There's a lot of, you can go to Amazon.com if your local fitness places are sold out, and there's a lot of chin-up bars or pull-up bars that you can get that go in door frames or other things. Can you talk about the benefits of pull-up and the difference between a pull-up and a chin-up?
Sure. So, pull-ups are, are going to be like, if one definition, pull-up is a pronated grip, so you're overhand with your grip. Then you have a chin-up, which is going to involve the biceps a little more, and it's a supinated grip, so your palms are facing you. Then you have like a neutral grip, chin-up or pull-up be called either, where your palms are facing one another. So then for most people, the neutral grip's going to be the easiest. With the chin-up being the second easiest and the pronated being the regular pull-up being the hardest. So I think the benefit's going to be a lot of people, first off, that have trained for a long period of time and maybe not had like a specific strength or tactical kind of goal, with their training might have been being too front happy, if you will, like just training all chest, biceps, triceps, or just chest, and biceps, triceps, that kind of stuff. So your disproportions, it's going to be a great way to just balance that out, because the pull-up's one of the most effective back builders. It's also going to be extremely important for a lot of, kind of physical confrontations you could be in, which involve grappling. Pulling strength is extremely important. It can also be important, I think, when it's not talked about a lot, is for climbing over an obstruction. You need to have that kind of strength in those situations. And it's also another one is, most people are going to be able to do and need to be doing it without using grip straps. So when you're training, even though it might not seem like you're working your grip, if you've been training already and started doing pull-ups, it's not probably not, for most people, grip's not going to limit them, but you most certainly are building your grip with a pull-up. And if you want to do sort of rob yourself a little bit of the benefits of a pull-up, but add a huge grip component, a way I like to really do them for that purpose is using a towel pull-up, where you just throw a towel over a pull-up bar and have to grip the towel, then it really taxes your grips. And you still get, say, you get 80% of the pull-up benefits, but you get, overtime of the grip benefits. So that's pretty cool too. So it has a ton of different, it can be balancing your physique, can be, keep making sure you don't get hurt. It can, because of imbalances. Then it actually has, job specific functions as well. So I think it's, definitely a winner if you're able to do them.
And the hand placement, so hands, palms facing away, palms facing you, palms facing each other, that would work the body differently as well, right? Work the back in different ways and work
Absolutely.
the biceps and other things?
Absolutely. So that's, I would say like, for bodybuilding people that aren't interested in these tactical stuff, if they've been training their arms, they've been training their arms for years and they're kind of at a plateau. A good way to bring them out of that plateau is to do a ton of pull-ups and with different grips. So you can do like a pull-up and a neutral grip that's going to hit your, brachialis, brachioradialis, and those muscles a little more. And then when you actually face it and fully supinate your palms, you hit the biceps a little more. So it's a great way. All those, most people think only the chin up, palms facing works the biceps, but you look at like your quote unquote biceps are made up of muscles that are elbow flexors. You hit those other elbow flexors with the neutral grip and with the pronated grip. So like, for instance, even like look at a barbell curl, your normal supinated grip barbell curl, your palms are facing you. If you want to, come out of a size or strength plateau, what you can, a lot of times what helps you a ton is doing a reverse curl with that pronated grip. So you work the other elbow flexors that you don't normally get. So even if you're like, I'm doing this mostly for aesthetics, I want to bring my arms up, you would get a benefit from working the pull-ups of all these different grips. Absolutely, 100%.
Now, what about for somebody that is either not used to doing pull-ups and maybe just starting at that, or maybe is used to going to the gym and using one of the machines where you can add weight that will kind of counterbalance, that will make the lift, the pull-up easier for me rather than so I'm not lifting my whole body weight. Are there progressions? Like, can I have somebody standing behind me and say lift up on my feet, or can I use resistance bands to help as a progression to develop the ability to do regular pull-ups?
Sure. So you can absolutely, I would prefer a resistance band to like one of those machines you're talking about, but I still think that machine you're talking about is probably better than a lat pull down, assuming somebody's healthy. So like, assuming someone's healthy and able to do it, assuming that they have the relative strength body weight ratio, when the different progressions we can do. So one is like, you basically start off with, whatever grip you want to work with. So let's just say, for example, it's a pull-up. So we'll just go with a pronated grip. You could substitute what I'm saying with a supinated or neutral grip, depending. So it's all fine. But if we're going with a pronated grip for this example, you would start off step one with like working more inverted rows, and then you would move on to from there, so that would be with your knees bent. Then next you could start doing those with your feet straight. So the mechanical advantage is not as, is more difficult there. Then from there, you could go to a flexed arm hang where you're holding up at the top of the movement. And then from there, move on to eccentric, loaded, where you're lowering yourself for a 5-second count, sometimes longer. And then also doing the band assisted there. So you're handling yourself in the eccentric and using that with band assisted as well. And then if you do that, you have a full on, by the end of that, you fall in that progression, you should have a full on pull up accomplished. So if you go, I have on YouTube a video at the Jailhouse Strong YouTube channel. It's basically a 16 step, what I just summarized right there pretty quickly, 16 steps on how you could do a pull up. So if you complete each one, we haven't had someone yet that's not able to do a pull-up. Just go in there, follow that, and it's a good way to basically start with pretty easy movement, and then by the end, you're doing eccentrics and band assisted, and before you know it, you're doing full-on pull-ups.
Excellent, and we'll certainly talk at the end of the interview about all of the resources that you have available, because you have a large amount of resources to help people with this training.
Yeah, and this one is totally free, so.
Excellent.
And it has it for the other movements too, like pistol squats and even push-ups, because I think a lot of us forget that, like, I'm guessing we're probably, I don't know who all is listening to this, I'm guessing we're more or less preaching to the choir of people that have bought into this. So probably most people can do a push-up, but there are people that can't.
Right.
And, we have stuff on how to do a regular push-up, and like that's needed because I think a lot of people that like design programs are in good shape. I mean, of course, anybody can bang out, anybody can bang out 20 pull-ups, or push-ups, but they can't. So
yeah, I think a lot of people have been through experiences either with high school sports or at a basic academy where push-ups were used as a punishment, and so people get out of that environment saying, I'm never going to do another freaking push-up again in my life. And then we get 15 or 20 years down the road and all the gyms are closed, and now we need to figure out how to go back to push-ups. Now, the other challenge in today's world is that although a lot of the fitness supply stores are open, they're sold out of a bunch of stuff because people are going crazy. I meant to check earlier to see if you tried to buy a pull-up bar, chin-up bar online, one that went in a door frame on Amazon or something. If you can still get those, you probably can. But I know in your book you talk about, and in one of the blog posts recently, you talk about the fact that you can do them off of a door. Now, I think a lot of people are going, how the hell do you do a pull-up off a bar? Can you talk, or a door? So can you talk about how you could use something as basic as a door to do this movement?
Yeah, you can completely you gotta wedge a towel in between there so you don't smash your fingers for a door. The other thing, or you get to wedge something in there so you don't gotta smash your fingers when you're actually doing it, and you just grab the top of the door. The other one that I've had a few people send me videos and didn't even mention it. So online clients saying, hey, do a pull-up, sign them pull-ups. And they didn't mention yet that they had lost their access to their gym. So everything's honky-dory, and they send a video to check it out. It's like them doing it on a tree. So a lot of people have been doing it off of trees too. So there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, if you, like, prisoners find all sorts of places. So I kind of use my son as an example. It's when he was 3 years old. He's been able to do pull-ups since he was 3. He wanted to do them so bad, and he kept talking about pull-ups, and he'd always run to the gym with me. And literally any surface he saw, he would start doing a pull-up on. So it was like he could even, short like a countertop or something to do a pull-up off. So there's so many different areas you can grab a pull. And if you have like a top of a door, like the frame of the door, excuse me, if you grip up there, I mean, yeah, you're probably not going to be busting out as many pull-ups because if it's one of those wide open ones, but you're getting a lot of grip strength work out of it. So usually you get if it's really hard to grip onto, you're not going to be doing your best pull-ups of your life, but you're getting payoffs in other areas too.
Absolutely. And so, I think, like you say, if people be creative, a branch on a big tree is a great way. Here, the playgrounds are all shut down, and there's somebody in one of the cities in our province who got an $800 ticket the other day for cranking out pull-ups on one of the playgrounds, on some of the playground equipment. So if you have a playground in your backyard, use that, but stay away from the public playgrounds that are shut down. So talk more about burpees. And again, that's some of the things, that's one of those that I think some people can have bad memories of because it was used as a punishment in certain environments. But talk about the fitness benefits of a burpee.
Yeah, I think a burpee is a really nice way to basically teach your body to work together as an integrated unit. So it's one of those exercises I like to call it like the Swiss Army knife of exercises, simply because there's it's probably not the best at one thing, but it's really good at a lot of different things. You know what I mean? So we might have, like say the deadlifts, you say I'm trying to target, whatever muscle. It's probably not going to be the best at targeting any specific muscle, but when you talk about like the whole body and integrating everything together, that's why it's effective. So again, the burpee, I like to use, I first started, when I started first researching for jail, I didn't have a lot of experience in burpees like I did with like push-ups and things like that, and pull-ups and stuff I did when I was growing up boxing. So I had a lot of experience there. So it wasn't like a very, when I came to Jailhouse Strong, it was like all these prisoners are doing burpees and push-ups and pull-ups, all the obvious stuff that I thought I'd see in there. But then reading more into it, I found out the burpee in the United States was one of the initial tests to see how fit a soldier was for World War II. That's why it came about. And I think and so I started learning more about how many different prisoners. It was amazing how many different prisoners do this. And I think they use it a lot of times as a conditioning tool. Like I said, that was basically when they do it. And I told you about that test earlier, 400 burpees in 40 minutes. It's what they call it is a you go, I go. So like there's one person leading the group. That one person goes, then if you're in the group, you would go. So it's you go, I go, back and forth. It's like the pace it's at. So it's kind of like interval. So it's really good. Obviously, I think no one denies it's good for conditioning. I think what it also has carryover into like, more of like self-defense scenarios, like to get down, get up quick, that kind of stuff. So it's good for that. But I think also something to be used very effectively for, if done right, is for building explosive power. If you do like your lower reps and finish off the burpee with a very high jump, instead of just like a regular 4-count burpee, at the end, jump up as high as you can. So if you do like, 3 or 4 reps and do them as explosively as possible, it's very good for very specific transferable explosive power. Because like we all like to do box jumps, but the odds of you actually having to just jump on a surface like, 2-footed like that and just jump up onto something is not real high on what's the occupational demand. But there obviously is carryover here, but the burpee you're doing explosively is you need to get up on the ground, jump up and run after somebody as explosively as possible. That's so functional and transferable.
Absolutely.
And I've been doing it more and more myself lately. I'm not a quote unquote tactical athlete. I just, we're working with all these athletes. I'm like writing these training programs, and I'm realizing I like training this way more than powerlifting, like a lot more. So I love it. I feel a lot better just walking around and stuff. So if someone's listening, not a tactical athlete, this has a ton of benefits for you, because a tactical athlete has to be ready for any situation, has to be explosive and strong, but can't lack endurance. So it's a hell of a combination.
Absolutely. It seems to me that some I've heard from a few people is, especially now there's a lot of people working at home, and, what a lot of them advocate is that you need to get up every, say, 20 to 25 minutes, move around a little bit, have like a 5-minute break. Is that something that you could crank out, say, 5 burpees on every 25-minute break, and over the course of a day you've done probably 100 plus burpees over the course of a day?
A lot of people I know personally that have been to, that have like, are pretty good condition and stuff, that like do high volume training. They do that, a similar concept, not so much while they're working, but I know a number of different people that for like chest work will just sit there and watch. This is not a very productive habit, but they'll sit there and let's say watch TV for 4 hours, and they bust out a ton of push-ups at commercials. So it's sort of the same concept of like, some people like to do it with short walks. What I do, I've in a gym, but I'll be at home for long periods of time too, for writing and doing online stuff. So people definitely need to do it. I guess for me, it's been like, second nature, because, when I wrote a really long book one time in 2012, and I was on the couch. It's before I had any kids, so I could just work where I wanted in the house. I sat on the couch, and I know that like multiple times I would go, like, I wouldn't even drink water a lot because I wanted to not get up to pee. That's how obsessive I got with it. And I know that I cranked out that book pretty well, but I did not physically feel. I wrote this awesome book on building muscle, and I felt like crap when I finished it because I never got off the couch to do anything. All I did was work out, and the workouts were short and they weren't functional. They're more like bodybuilding type of workouts, just to like not take a lot of time and not move a lot because I was so stiff. So I definitely learned from that experience, and I don't do it with burpees so much, but like, I definitely do it with, just getting up and walking around. So I think if you want to take it to the next level, that absolutely work well.
Now, the other thing I've heard you talk about to add intensity to burpees is, as you come up out of the burpee, you jump up and do a pull-up. Can you talk about adding elements like that to change it up, to add intensity, but even maybe just for something different?
Yeah, so that's a great way to do it. It's like you jump up, and especially if you got something, you want to make it kind of high too if you can. Not to the point where you're challenging yourself. You got a 50-50 chance of grabbing and you fall over backwards and not be able to work type of high, but like a challenge. So what you do is you get up, and again, I like these for more lower reps because we're after more explosive power. So I wouldn't do these as much for like, I'm going to just see how many I can do type of thing to get tired, like sets of 3, take a little break. But if you do this, multiple times, you get some definitely conditioning element out of it. But it's exactly what you do. You do a burpee, jump up on the bottom, but instead of just doing a vertical jump up, you do a pull up at the top of the movement. So you grab a pull up bar, do a pull up there. You can also do these with, some people, another one we like to do is, jump up out of that and then throw a knee each way and do a burpee, like just simulating the knee. You can do that kind of stuff too. So there's tons of different stuff you can do with a burpee. It's just when you come up out of the bottom, what are you going to do? You can even do another one is a burpee to box jump. You do a burpee, then you jump up onto a box jump. So that's a good way to like quantitatively measure to make sure you're getting that high. And those are like for like more conditioned athletes. I like to do this for conditioning as well. Is not just maximizing explosive power, but if you can do a number of those on like say a pretty decently high box, I mean that means your condition, you're able to perform explosive movements under fatigue and duress, and that makes you in a very special, effective class of people at that point. Absolutely. And another one you can do is if you have it, add a weighted vest. That's pretty intense, but doing lower reps and stuff explosively with a weighted vest, is another good one.
Absolutely.
But you guys all got to make sure you got the base strength to do this, So if you're, squatting 185 pounds and you weigh 250, I wouldn't start off trying to do this.
Right. And you mentioned box jumps a couple times. Can you talk a little bit about box jumps? And again, that's something I think that people need to do on a progressive level. But the other element I've heard a fitness guy talk about was emphasizing a soft landing so that it's not the jarring on your body when you land on the surface. Can you talk about the benefit of box jumps?
Yeah, so box jumps are one of the simplest ways to build explosive power. So explosive power is, your rate of force development, how much force can you develop quickly. And the reason that's, that's the reason that's important is if you could develop a lot of force in a situation where you need to use it, but it took, imagine if you could punch hard enough to punch down a brick wall, but it took 10 seconds to do it, it really wouldn't be effective in a real life situation. So you really need to focus on your rate of force development. And obviously, one way to do that is by just getting stronger. The more force you're able to produce, your threshold, say it takes, half a second to get 50% of your maximum force production. If your maximum force production is 1,000 pounds, just for an easy number, it's 500. If it's 200, it's 100. So that's the first way. The other way is like just doing these kind of like box jumps and stuff. And what you got to be careful with the box jumps is a few different things. I think one is a problem I see with them is people doing too high, which is not needed. Like you can just jump up higher than the box. You don't have to set a record like jumping up on the tailgate of your truck where you have a 50-50 chance. I had someone send me a video doing a box jump and they put it was on the tailgate of their truck was up. And like, it's like a 4-inch surface there to land. I mean, it's like a third of the size of the guy's foot. Very, very dangerous. And that's not needed. You could just jump on something half that height and get higher up. The second is when people do these really high jumps, they're no longer forcing the explosive power so much. They're forcing a hip mobility drill. So they're just landing so low in a full squat position with their ankles and their butt that it no longer becomes about explosive power. It becomes a thing of like hip mobility, which if that's your desired training adaptation, that's fine, but that's what you're getting more when you start doing these. It's interesting. You'll see people that can jump on a super high box, but then on other movement, then their vertical jump's not very high. Or other modalities, wow, this person jumped on, a 50-inch box, and then you tell them, okay, we're going to run a 40-yard dash, and they run in, 5.5 seconds or something, it's not very good. It doesn't add up. That's what it is. A lot of times it's just working their hip mobility instead of like training the explosive power. But if done right, you also want to really, like you said, focus on the landing. That's extremely important. So, and then even the surface you're landing on, if you have like a foam surface or something, that's going to be better. You don't want to be jumping on concrete. And if you have some sort of foam or rubber surface, it's going to be a lot easier on your joints. And you're not sacrificing any of the quality to do it. You're only taking away the potential negative drawbacks and getting all the benefits. So it's not like, I get 80% of the benefit to make it safer. No, it's you get 100% of the benefit, but you eliminate about 80% of the risk type of thing. So that's extremely important for developing, and it's an extremely simple way to do it. I'm not big on tactical athletes using Olympic lifts. I think the learning curve is too high. If somebody has a background in those lifts, that's a different conversation. But for most people, like perfecting a snatch or a clean and jerk is not worth the time investment. Because say somebody has 5 hours a week to train, are we going to use, 60% of that 5 hours to perfect an Olympic lifting technique? It doesn't make sense to me unless that person's wanting to compete in Olympic lifting or something. It's just we can just grab a sandbag, do an explosive load onto a surface that forces that same triple extension, but is a way easier learning curve and actually has more, functional transferable benefits, and it's going to be easier on the elbows and wrists on top of it.
Absolutely. Excellent. Great information. Great explanation. Now, when you talked about burpees, you talked about one of the options is when you jump up and then simulate throwing a knee strike or throw a knee strike into a simulated opponent. Can you talk about kind of that shadow boxing, how we can use those simulated knee strikes, elbow strikes, even if we don't have a heavy bag to work out on, we can still build those into part of the conditioning, right? And same with martial arts training, whatever, or people that are defensive tactics training. Can you talk about building that in as a conditioning element?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, a tactical athlete, you only have so much time you can be training. It's not like, you the mid-morning workouts technique, the night workouts power, then, the other workouts endurance type of thing. That's not very realistic in a day. So we're going to have to combine a lot of things. So it's extremely important for the tactical athletes. You guys get the bang for your buck here instead of just, trying to, not everything's to be optimal, and the field is not going to be optimal. Like, yeah, it's not optimal to have to sprint your fastest with, 66 pounds of gear on if you're on a SWAT team, but that's just the reality of it. So, definitely with the shadow boxing and things like that, I always say this too, besides not having a bag to do this stuff on, I think there's a performance benefit too. If you guys get good enough on your feet where you're starting to throw really hard punches, you're starting to throw elbows, you're starting to throw knees, and you're staying on balance, I mean, that's why, those for the actual combative sports that are part of it, I think they're so effective is not only see yourself doing it right and repeat it, but you're actually, if you're able to, if you have like a 200-pound huge bag and you're just laying into it every time, obviously the bag's stopping you quite a bit, so you're able to do that more. But if you could do that on your feet and having to move around, you're going to be more effective that way. And I would recommend when you guys do it more faster paced and shorter rounds, because you got to think, how long is this situation going to really last for? It probably won't last beyond 30 seconds. So you need to be like deadly for 30 seconds. You need to be nonstop for 30 seconds, punch after punch, knee after knee, and just be relentless for 30 seconds rather than it's not the Queen's Marquee rule of boxing where you're going to be moving around the ring for 3 minutes and, working the jab and filling your opponent out. It's going to be fast, furious, and nasty. So get after it and do it fast. And I think that's where that kind of conditioning comes in play. I'd rather see you guys doing really intense stuff for 30 seconds than kind of pacing it for 3 minutes if you want transference to the job.
From a transference and a more functional element, is rotation part of this, that when I'm throwing those elbow strikes, in order to generate power, I'm rotating the body. If I'm practicing, say, a straight arm bar takedown, I'm going to step back, turn, and drop down to a knee. So is that rotational element also beneficial to us from a total body perspective as well?
Absolutely, 100% it is. Yeah, it's gonna be just from, you're 100%. I totally agree with that. Yes.
And I mean, even people that are training in a variety of martial arts, jiu-jitsu or other things, I mean, they can practice a lot of those ground movements actually on the ground and practicing some of those explosive movements and developing a lot of different aspects of the body as well, correct?
Yeah, so I don't know jiu-jitsu very well. I used to box. I've taken Muay Thai, so I know how to throw knees and stuff, but I don't know jiu-jitsu real well. But my business partner, Don Benchi, has won the world championships in jiu-jitsu in Brazil in 2003, I believe. And we just put up a video on YouTube on solo jiu-jitsu moves. I think there's a ton of different stuff of drills and things you can absolutely do that are gonna help you. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, can you talk a little bit about some programming or spacing of this? I know, you read about people like Herschel Walker that, would do hundreds of push-ups every single day, or you read about people that do a ton of push-ups and squats every day. Is there a benefit to doing these things daily, or should we be having gap days or do like upper body one day, lower body the next? Or can you talk a little bit about the programming piece of this? And you offer a lot of
Sure.
Great programming in your Jailhouse Strong book, but can you talk about some of that?
I think you can definitely, here's the thing. So I think most people are going to, especially tactical athletes, are going to have problems with doing very high volume, same movement, everyday body weight training. So like a lot of people, like you're talking about Herschel Walker or somebody, but I think that, there is some success. There's some clues we can draw from that success they've had. I think you definitely, if you said, hey, you know what, you're going to have to do, squats and deadlifts heavy every day, or even like light but high volume every day, I would be much more concerned about the body. There's a lot of the body weight. A lot of people do get away with body weight training daily. So definitely, if you recover well, you don't have a lot of stress. You got to also figure out in your recovery what's going on outside the gym plan or roll. So if everything's, training is a purposeful application of stress that's going to force a desired adaptation. So everything is, like think about other stress that you don't really have as much, that you don't like. It's smoggy outside. I went to Beijing to do a seminar, and it was like, I was doing sprints on this outdoor terrace, and it was a lot harder to recover from just because of how smoggy it was. Like you walk outside, it's hard to breathe almost. And that would have, if I lived in Beijing and trained there, that would have to be factored into the recovery. That would adversely affect my recovery. That's a stressor. So all these different stressors, a tactical athlete working a midnight shift, that's going to affect yours. So if in a perfect world, you can get away with a ton of body weight training, but you have to be realistic of your situation. One way I like to do it is if you're going 3 days a week, I would like to do one primarily upper body day, one primarily lower body day, and then one full body day. So we can use that rotation over a course of time. So you go, a full body day, lower body day, upper body day, lower body day, full body day, and keep rotating that day. So you got 3 times a week, you got 6 times a week. If you train by yourself, the beauty of it is you can spread it out how you want. So you go like a lower body day, an upper body day, day off, full body day off, upper body day, lower body day off. So that's the thing, is like a lot of people believe a training week has to be 7 days, but if you're training body weight, odds are you're doing it by yourself. So unless there's just a reason you can't do certain things certain days, you could spread it out where a week, is not 7 days, it's 8 or 9 days. I get 5 or 6 workouts in 9, or I get say 6 workouts in 9 days rather than 6 workouts in 7 days type of thing. And you can play it that way, because you got to remember the body weight training. One of the beauties of it is it doesn't take a long time. You're not having to, like, if you're squatting, you're a strong squatter, so you're going to up to 550 pounds for 5 reps. It might take you 25 minutes, just to get up to that weight, and then you do multiple sets, and, then you do accessory work and all that. It drags out to 2 hours. Where this, you can get a really effective workout in a half hour.
So what are some things that you would do from a body weight perspective on the full body day?
So that would be where I would personally put things like, I would put more of your, like burpees and things like that are your full body. Right. Then I would put, I would do more explosive stuff. So even though like box jumps aren't like your whole, they're more of a lower body thing, it's explosive. So I'd put a lot of the explosive stuff and the full body stuff on that day is how I would do it. And then more of like the strength stuff and conditioning stuff on the lower body, the regular lower body day or the regular upper body day. So keep that to like the burpees, the box jumps, things like that day.
Excellent. Now, you hear a lot of people talk about the deadlift as kind of one of the go-to fundamental exercises. If you don't have access to a gym or to the bars and stuff to do that, are there other things that you can do that would simulate the benefits of a deadlift? Like I know if you have resistance bands, there's things you can do with resistance bands. Is there other things you can do to simulate the benefits of something like a deadlift?
Well, a lot of times you got to look at the objects you have outside, because there's a guy that actually is a tactical athlete that he's like, I got an idea for deadlift, hang tight. I said, okay, what is it? And his dad at his house had a boat, and the way the whatever the deal was, the boat was sitting on had like a front sort of bar thing, and he was doing like, it just looked like a car deadlift at a strongman contest. So a lot of times with just looking around with what you have, you could absolutely simulate the deadlift. I mean, if you're, I took my kids hiking out in the woods the other day, and I saw a tree that had fallen down, and you could like pick up the end of that tree and simulate like a sumo deadlift. So there's definitely things you can do like that. You just gotta be careful if it gets too heavy, because if you hadn't trained like this before, so say like, I'm going to start going out and pick up rocks or something instead of doing the deadlift, that's going to be fine, whatever. But at the same time, if you hadn't trained that way, you should start off with something pretty light to get used to it, because it is the benefit of training with a strongman odd shaped objects is, I guess they're different. They shift, they move, they're weird, they're off balance. That's the benefit, but that's also the part that could be the detriment too if you're not careful, not used to it. So you have to kind of build up to it, just how a Major League Baseball player doesn't come out throwing, full speed. A pitcher doesn't come out full speed the first day of spring training. They kind of build into it. Most sprinters aren't coming out like running. They're going to run 100 meters, or that's their target. They're either going to run a really short distance fast, or they're going to do longer distance and not at full speed. They're not going to do that they're not going to be at like max velocity from day one. Look at it like that. So there's plenty of stuff you can find outside to simulate that, or in your house, like your couch and stuff. Just make sure if you're not used to training this way, that you're not going to a maximum right off the bat, as tempting as it might be, because there is a higher element of risk if you're not used to training like that.
Excellent. Great point, and some great examples, and some things that people can certainly do. So, Josh, I really appreciate you making time. I appreciate all the information. So what's the best way for people to find out more about you, about the services that you offer, about all the resources that you have? So where would you want to direct people, or to multiple sites, to access all of the things
Sure.
that you have available?
I would definitely think this strongman stuff is of interest to you. Get my newest book. It's called Tactical Strongman Training, and I think it's geared towards tactical athletes. I think that's a huge game changer. Then for me personally, to get in contact or see like articles, blogs, things like that, is joshstrength.com is my website. Instagram is Jailhouse Strong, and post right now we're posting a bodyweight workout every single day just to try to be helpful to people, and then regular training tips too, like for more like lifting stuff, and mindset stuff too there. And then YouTube, got to just put up an interview last week with a SWAT officer about tactical type of strongman training, and then have more traditional stuff up there too. That's the Jailhouse Strong YouTube, but I think those would be the best places to get in touch with me or see what I'm doing. And I appreciate everybody listening, and I know this information will be helpful to you guys. And if you have any questions, just let me know.
Excellent. So Instagram and YouTube are Josh Strong, and the website
Jailhouse Strong.
Jailhouse Strong. Okay.
Instagram, yes, sir. And then the website's joshstrength.com.
Excellent. And there's a lot of great resources, and you have a lot to offer there. So, Josh, I really appreciate you making time for the interview, but more importantly, I appreciate all the contributions and your work towards helping the tactical athletes in the first responder world and law enforcement to develop that tactical fitness. And so for everything that you have done, everything you continue to do to provide so much information and resources to us, I truly thank you for that.
I really appreciate you having me on here, Brian. I jumped on the opportunity once you contacted me. I checked you out. I thought you were doing some great work, so it made perfect sense, and it's an honor to do this. So thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that. And so to the members of the Excellence in Training Academy community, as always, I'm going to encourage you to let the information that Josh shared with you simmer, percolate overnight, and then be intentional about sitting down tomorrow, writing out your greatest takeaways, writing out your action steps. What actions do you need to take to start implementing some of this into your workouts and your tactical fitness program, or what do you need to do to share it with others, because that's absolutely critical. And make sure you check out all those resources that Josh has available. And so to the members of the Excellence Training Academy community, community. Thank you for your commitment to excellence both in and through training. Always continue to train hard, train smart, train with passion and purpose, and always be willing to dare to be great.